Hello and welcome to this week's Sidebar. We're here to discuss episode 8 of season 3 of Proof. And I'm here with Jacinda and Kevin. Hey guys, got any snakes around you right now?
I do not like snakes.
Have we confirmed for sure there was no snakes in James Long's bag?
We have not confirmed that because we have not
You
opened
haven't opened
it.
it.
But when we got out of the car, like we saw the snake go up to like under the car. When we got out of the car, like 45 minutes or an hour later, Jacinda like wouldn't get out of the car. She like wanted me to look under the car. And I'm like, I'm driving like 70 miles an hour for 45 minutes. I don't think it's going to be under there.
We saw the snake go up underneath. Like I was convinced it was going to crawl through somehow. But yeah, we survived.
Well, we heard in the episode that James Long passed away a few years ago now, which is unfortunate. We are really, really hoping to talk to him. I feel like one way or another, he would have had a lot of useful information to give us.
Yeah. And I mean, we were kind of surprised. Like we couldn't find any record of his
So he
death.
had no record of death. Like I was like, he's got to be alive. Like there'd be something of his death. There was nothing, but no, he's dead.
I think the thing that surprised me was in talking to the neighbors, how nobody knew a thing about him. Like nobody had a conversation with him. Nobody had an exchange with him. I mean, he was there, and I think you say it in the episode, Susan, he was there for 2 decades,
Yep, early 90s when they moved there.
and nobody had an interaction with him. Like there'd never been like a neighbor that like signed for a package or, had an exchange. That was extraordinary to me.
They didn't even really know his name. Like they seemed confused that they were both named James.
It was Jimmy who was the one who interacted with the neighbors.
Yeah. So trying to get information about James Long has been difficult. Even in Kalamazoo, the only people who knew him, and they're few and far between. So we're still looking into James Long, hoping to find more about him. But it was a setback learning he had died.
Yeah, I keep hoping someone will call in with more information.
I would love to see pictures of him from that time, even though we've gotten a description. We know he was tall and slender and had blonde hair, but I'd love to see more pictures of him. It was also strange, we mentioned this in the episode too, that James Long ended up living not that far from where Stacy ended up living. No, there's nothing we've seen or any
No, it's not
indication.
connected. It's just a strange.
Yeah, they don't know each other, but it's still kind of, it's a weird coincidence.
We're talking 15, 20 miles, which down in that section of Alabama is nothing. That's like being neighbors. I mean, it was kind of crazy when we realized they were both right there.
So we heard more about Stacy and her testimony and how her statements came to be. Yeah, like Stacy, do we believe everything she says? No. Do we think she's just a liar who's made up the whole story about Scott? No, that's not what happened here. Something more complicated and more difficult to detect, I think, is what happened in this case.
Yeah, I think that she's also now someone who's come under what she feels is so much pressure that I feel that every time someone asks her a question about it, she's defensive, even if the question isn't aggressive. At least that's how I felt with talking to her sometimes. I felt like she was defensive, particularly on this second trip to Alabama. She was nervous a little bit, I would say. And I think that the story has changed so much that I think that she constantly finds herself trying to say, well, this is what happened. And I think it becomes frustrating for her probably too.
One example of this that does not get discussed in the show is that in Stacy's very first statement, she actually says that, in fact, when Scott confesses to her, he tells her that he and someone else committed the murder, and that someone else will be a guy named, let's just say, Brad. And after that, this is totally forgotten from her story. She never mentions it again to the police at the trial. When you guys asked her about it, she's like, no, never came up, never ever came up. But we know she specifically said this guy, Brad, did it with Scott back in 1989. Well, of course, the cold case team went and found this Brad guy, one friend of Scott's, and then confirmed that he was in the military and living in the South. Like he was stationed in the South at the time of the murders. Definitely did not commit the crime with Scott. So Stacy's memory just totally writes out the fact that she claimed at one point that Scott confessed he'd done it with someone, probably him.
I mean, I've said this before, but the thing that always confuses me is that she's not clear on when he actually confessed to her. That seems to change. And we talk about that in this episode.
I would argue she is clear in that like her gut reaction, her instant response in like 2009, in 2025, and in 1989 was that he confessed right away. It's only when the cold case team starts questioning her this whole like maybe it was a year later thing happens. But her memory does seem to be pretty firm in her head now that it was quick that he confessed.
I don't know if I agree with that entirely because she remembers sequences of events. So in her mind, she remembers he confessed, and I went to the police right away.
Yeah. But she remembers the Jeep, which was sold within like 2 weeks. And
Yes.
she remembers it being on Forest and they were living somewhere else a year later. I mean, it's her story cannot be true literally because it defies like space and time. So yeah, where does that leave you?
I remember saying to Rich Madison, I find it confusing that she's like the key witness and she doesn't know when he confessed to her. Like you're talking about a murder. It's not an everyday ordinary thing.
If her story was straightforward and simple and Scott just confessed to her, she should be able to answer this.
Right. Right. She should be able to tell you when it happened pretty specifically, but she's not. And even if she says, I know it was within a couple of days, the facts still get cloudy there and the specifics still get cloudy for me when I'm talking to her about it. And I think that confuses me and gives me pause.
She's also, again, she testifies and she says originally, he's like, oh, I was at work and he picked me up at deja vu and drove me home and confessed to me on the drive back. And the TU guy, she's like, oh, I'm very sure I was at home and he came over to the house and I said, I'll go out and, just say hi and like get him away. And then he confessed. And then she'll be like, I remember like waiting for my sister to get home so I could tell her about the confession. And she's like, I remember waiting for my sister to wake up to go to work so I could tell her about the confession. So like she's had like 100 like sequences of how this occurred. And each time she's like, here's my clear memory.
Yeah. And that seems odd to me. And, I don't have a personal reference point to sort of equate it to, about someone coming to me and confessing about a murder, but, still remember finding out that my mother had died. Like there are things that happen that sort of stand out and you have a frame of reference for them. And
Or if you didn't remember, you wouldn't recall a very precise memory a dozen different ways.
that's right. I think I would be like, I'm not sure really, or I blocked it out. And that's not what we get.
We also heard this episode about Lloyd Magruder and Missy Jarsma, who were the corroborating quote unquote witnesses for Stacey's story. And what we found out from Lloyd, which is Scott's friend, yes, he does recall this whole deal about Scott painting his Jeep, and that was used to corroborate Stacey at trial. But the rest of Stacey's story, he has no idea about.
Yeah, he has no memory of seeing a bloody stick being thrown across the yard, picked up, thrown back, put in the burn barrel, bloody clothes, nothing. He was there. He saw Scott spray painting his Jeep matte black, and that's it.
And when you ask Stacey about it, Stacey's like, well, maybe Missy wasn't there. Maybe it was just Lloyd and he didn't see me, which changes the story entirely.
Yeah, it changes the story entirely. Yes, completely.
It goes from I showed Missy the newspaper, or I called, all kinds of stories to, well, maybe she didn't see me there.
There's also a detail in Lloyd's original police statement that Lloyd still remembers when he spoke to him. And it's about Stacey. So he does not recall ever seeing the bloody clothes, the burn barrel, the bloody stick. Like never saw any of that. That's not something that happened the day he was there and Scott painted the Jeep. He does, however, recall like a few days after that, hearing a story from Stacey as he told the cold case team about Stacey saying that Scott came home bloody and like burned some clothes in a burn barrel or something. So he remembers hearing something about that, but definitely not being there and definitely it not being about a murder. And also not at the same time that the Jeep was being painted.
The whole Lloyd and painting the Jeep thing, Rich Madison says this in a previous episode of the show. We're talking about like Scott's painting the Jeep and he puts it up under the covering in case it rains and he's doing this and it's everybody's giving all this sort of credence to him painting the Jeep. And I've never taken it to think that Lloyd thought it was anything other than him just painting his Jeep. And Scott was painting his Jeep and he'd been, I don't know, talking about doing it for a while or something. And
For a few days. Yeah, there is evidence to support that like before Earl O'Byrne was murdered, This plan for fixing up the Jeep was in progress.
It feels like the investigation gets fixated on this concept, and I'm just not sure I'm buying it.
I mean, Scott pointed out to us the Jeep was like a dark green and he spray painted it matte black. He's like, if I was trying to disguise it, why would I choose another dark color?
Yeah, forest green to black's not really a huge like that's not the cover up you think it is.
And at night, if someone sees a dark green or black, maybe, it's close enough. But he's like,
See the CJ7, the dark CJ7, done, it's a match. Okay, it's not forest green, but at night it could have been black.
right.
So, yeah, the idea that the Jeep painting was about him hiding a murder. I mean, even in a world where Scott was guilty, I don't think the Jeep was about that. Like, I don't think that's connected. Like the timing, the motivation, like it just doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't add up at all.
I wish we could have spoken to Missy, right? I think that that would have been important information, and I wish that she was in a position to speak to us. She says that she's not, and we'll have to take her at her word on that.
Yeah, I wish so too. But, it's not the end of our investigation. It was helpful to hear from Lloyd and his side of the story. And it was so alarming, I guess is the right word, Susan, when Lloyd testifies at trial, no one follows up and says, who else was there with you?
Yeah.
Like
That's the next question. Ask it.
that's sort of stunning.
Yeah. I mean, so Stacey, there's a lot about her statements and all of it that just never came out at trial. Like one thing Stacey kept telling you guys was that like, oh, Scott came home with blood on him all the time. He would try and like break into cars and get blood in his hands. So I feel like that would have been relevant for a trial too. Like Scott coming home with blood on him,
Yeah, she told
not
us
unheard of.
he would like break a window or something and have bloody hands. And she recalled a time when his mom had to help, bandage his hands. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that would have helped. It also doesn't paint him in the greatest light that he's
No,
out there
that's true.
busting windows.
And I'm not even sure it's true because there's no evidence. We have evidence of crimes Scott was committing going into cars, but there's zero reports of him breaking windows like that. So,
Yeah. And he would say if car's unlocked, I'd open it.
yeah.
He totally admits to that.
And the police reports back him up in that. So we're not sure what Stacey's talking about. But I mean, just hearing Stacey, when I first heard her on the audio say, "Oh yeah, Scott came home bloody a bunch," I'm like, "What? That seems relevant."
Well, and also it's like if he came home bloody a lot, how do you know this night was the night connected to the murder?
Because he had a broken piece of wood, 12 inches long,
Yeah.
apparently. So yeah, I mean, Stacey should never have been the witness that someone was sentenced to life in prison on.
There's something about her, and you guys probably disagree with me, but I feel like she thinks she's doing the right thing. I believe that she believes Scott was involved in this. She believes this, and she feels like she did the right thing. Now, beyond that, if what she reported isn't true and everything we found supports that it wasn't true, then is she doing the right thing? No, but it was a gut feeling she had, and she followed it through.
Like the story she tells shows that she is someone who can be prone to exaggeration.
Prone to exaggeration and prone to being led. Even Kevin and I realized that when we were talking to her.
I think she does have this mentality that, and I think that a lot of witnesses have this mentality that they want to please you, or they want to, say something that in your mind is right. And I don't think that that was happening to an incredible detail with us.
Well, also you were being very conscious of it and trying to be very careful about not doing that.
No, sure, absolutely. But I do think that, it seems like that could have happened in her discussions with the police officers. And maybe not saying that they're intentionally trying to get an outcome. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I am saying that I think she could be prone to wanting to give them the story that they think what might have happened.
Well, we talk in the show about like working on his waking a memory, but you guys unintentionally do that with her by telling her that Lloyd says he didn't see her. And suddenly she has this memory of "Oh, maybe Lloyd didn't see me. Maybe I stayed inside the basement the whole time."
That's right.
And she just immediately pops up with this new memory slash version of the story to accommodate the new information she's been given.
And that's what I meant by what I was talking about earlier. Like she's felt this pressure all the time. So she's looking for logical ways that that could have happened if that in fact is the case, right? If Lloyd didn't see her, she's looking for a logical way that that could have happened. Like, oh, maybe he didn't see me. And I'm not even saying that she's lying about it. I'm saying she's looking for a logical explanation for why that would have been the case. And I think that can happen to witnesses in cases. I think it's certainly possible that it happened in this situation. And when you see someone sort of doing that in front of you, you sort of naturally think, well, when else has it happened?
All right, so talk to Stacy. James Long is dead. That was not the end of the trip because y'all got a phone call while talking to me, mysteriously rushed off again. And y'all were literally driving to the airport, weren't you?
Yeah, we were heading out of town when we got a phone call that we could come back over to James Long's house, the abandoned house, and pick up a bag of his belongings.
The neighbors who'd been deeded the house, when we first met them, talked about how we wanted to get inside and have a look around, and they're like, it's too dangerous. And that was obviously disappointing for us and sort of, you know, pushing my nose against the window, like trying to see what's what. And so when we got this phone call from them that they had gone in and bagged up everything that they could find, that was sort of extraordinary. So here we are driving through, the back roads of Alabama, racing to get this trash bag filled with clothes from James and Jimmy.
And I want to stress the fact that this is in no way, shape, or fashion how evidence collection should be done.
Yeah, right, right.
But like there's not a whole lot of other options here. Like if there's ever going to be a chance to test James' DNA, like this is not the ideal chance, but it's a chance.
It was the only chance, and I'll stress to everyone who's listening, going, what the fuck? It had already been bagged up before they even talked to us. So it wasn't like, oh, hey, like,
It was not the plan.
let us come and do it and take pictures while we do it and videotape it or something. Nope. It was, yeah, we left this trash bag for you on the porch.
They did make a point to let us know that he wore gloves when he went in and bagged stuff up.
Again, not ideal evidence collection, but like it also, in terms of like getting James Long's DNA, it's not like it probably worked. If I had to guess, there are probably a lot of James Long's cells and DNA in that bag. Almost certainly, in fact.
Yeah, I would think that there are. Like, I think if I remember right, the time she said there was a toothbrush and a comb and maybe a hat and a jacket. So one would presume that if there's actually a toothbrush and a comb, that there's a decent chance there's some DNA in there.
And their understanding was it came from the room that was James Long's. And it was not the room that Jimmy, who they knew a little better because he talked to them once in a while after James's death. It was not Jimmy's room. It was James's room, from their understanding.
That's right. But I would say that I don't know, like, they're putting clothes in. I mean, maybe these guys are sharing clothes, or I don't know how they could know that for sure, but yes.
So, do we know if there's any use that can be done with this bag? We do not yet. We're looking into options. That may be the only way we get answers now. I don't want to say that because that's a Hail Mary chance, but it's something.
It is worth looking into.
So we also heard about Corky Lard's case, the cold case conviction of the man who pled guilty, got a manslaughter charge in only 7 years, and whom Rich Madison believes was actually innocent. And we heard about the murder he was convicted of and why it's strange they even got Corky in the first place, given that they had such a good suspect, an obvious suspect right in front of them. Tim Kissinger is dead now, but he was a violent criminal known for several home invasions of elderly people. Anyway, he was the last person seen with Wally Gould, the victim. Wally Gould and him drove home together, and we know that Wally Gould does not go home, and Wally Gould's car is found very, very close to where Kissinger lived. The only evidence to clear Kissinger is a past polygraph, apparently, but nothing else. I mean, it is hard for me to understand why Kissinger was not the one that the cold case team focused on, other than maybe he was already doing life in prison, so there's no new story, I guess, if you get him. I'm not sure.
But the interesting thing, and I don't think it's in the show, but Rich Madison told us that he kept going out there to the prison to try and get him to confess to it.
He did. Yeah, no, Madison, this case, like even after it was over and everything was done, Madison still kept trying to get Kissinger to come clean about Wally Gould, and I assume other cases too. And Kissinger never did.
I think that Rich certainly believed that Kissinger was the killer, and he wanted to get him to just admit to it up until his dying day.
But instead, the cold case team convicted Corky Lard, despite the fact none of the pieces really add up. Like again, the story is that Corky and him, like somehow Wally Gould dropped off Kissinger and then went to go drink with his ex-brother-in-law, who was not like they weren't close friends or anything. They go and drink together in a cemetery, and suddenly Corky kills him and leaves the body there and wraps it in a child's dress, even though like parts of Wally Gould's skull weren't even at this cemetery, so the body is clearly moved. And none of it makes sense. It just doesn't make sense.
Even though the car is
And
found.
and then apparently after killing Wally Gould in the cemetery, Corky took his car and drove it over to Kissinger's house. Like it doesn't make any sense at all.
If somebody has committed other murders, seems plausible he's capable of it.
And again, last person seen with the victim and can't really explain what happened to him after. So next week, we will be talking all about a different cold case. We'll discuss more about the Polderman case, which was the last case, really, that the cold case team ever took on.
And it is a doozy.
So tune in Monday for that, and we'll be back next week for a sidebar. Bye, guys.
Bye, Susan. You've been listening to Proof Sidebar, a podcast by Red Marble Media in association with Glassbox Media. Send us your questions and comments at proofcrimepod@gmail.com. Follow us everywhere with the handle @proofcrimepod and on our website, proofcrimepod.com. Thanks so much for listening.